Hello again. Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Cornamola. I'm the Executive Director of Gathering Ground. And on behalf of our team, I want to welcome you today to today's quarterly briefing, the state of labor unions and organizing in the U.S. with Amazon Labor Union founder, Chris Smalls. Thank you, Chris, for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
We're excited to have you here. Any discussion of and in New Jersey cannot begin without consideration of land and labor. Land and labor acknowledgements are tangible political admissions of the ongoing violence of the settler colonial state and our own implicit participation in it. I'll turn it over to Casey. Anaya's not feeling well. She usually does our land acknowledgement, but Casey will step in today. Casey, you're muted. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Here we go. Round two. The land acknowledgement is offered by the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape tribal nation for those who seek to honor the Lenape people and their territory preceding an event in Lenapehoking, also known as New Jersey. The land upon which we gather is part of the traditional territory of the Lenni Lenape, called Lenapehoking. The Lenape people lived in harmony with one another upon this territory for thousands of years. During the colonial era and early federal period, many were removed west and north, but some also remain among the continuing historical tribal communities of the region: the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape tribal nation, the Ramapo Lenape nation, the Powhatan Lenape nation, the Nanticoke of Millsboro, Delaware, and the Lenape of Cheswold, Delaware. We acknowledge the Lenni Lenape as the original people of this land and their continuing relationship with their territory. In our acknowledgement of the continued presence of Lenape people in their homeland, we affirm the aspiration of the great Lenape chief Tamanend that there be harmony between the indigenous people of this land and the descendants of the immigrants to this land, as long as the rivers and creeks flow and the sun, moon, and stars shine.
Okay. Thank you, Casey. This labor acknowledgement is offered by Dr. T.J. Stewart, Assistant Professor of Higher Education and Student Affairs at Iowa State University. We must acknowledge that much of what we know of this country today, including its culture, economic growth, and development throughout history and across time, has been made possible by the labor of enslaved Africans and their ascendants who suffered the horror of the transatlantic trafficking of their people, chattel slavery, and Jim Crow. We are indebted to their labor and their sacrifice, and we must acknowledge the tremors of that violence throughout the generations and the resulting impact that can still be felt and witnessed today. For us at Gathering Ground, we read these statements to make visible what has been invisible to many people, particularly people racialized as white. We acknowledge these historical truths of the theft of people and land, enslavement, forced migration, and forced labor. And though this is our history, it must not be our future. We at Gathering Ground are committed to working in community and constant dialogue with all of you in disrupting this fatalistic view and create new norms and new structures for a more equitable world. Before I turn it over to our special guest, Chris, I just want to tell you a little bit about Gathering Ground so you get to know us if this is the first time you're joining us today. We are a multicultural, multiracial, multi-generational, and socioeconomically diverse movement of people committed to taking action that creates thriving and equitable communities. Gathering Ground offers a variety of programs designed to address systemic issues and empower individuals to become agents of positive change. From community engagement initiatives to collaborative learning experiences, each program, like our briefing today, is developed and crafted with the needs of our community in mind and with our goal of cultivating a culture of equity and justice. I want to recognize briefly the people who have been working on today's briefing. We have a small but mighty team at Gathering Ground. I want to start with Casey O'Brien, our Director of Programming. Anaya Brown, our communications associate. And although she's not with us today, we couldn't do this without our operations associate, Alyssa Prevost. And we want to thank our funding champion, Robert Wood Johnson, Grunin Foundation, and PSE&G for making this program possible. I sincerely want to thank all of you today for making time in your busy schedules to be with us today. We hope that you continue to participate in Gathering Ground programs, and we hope you join us for future events. So please stay connected with us, and we have a lot of stuff coming up this year. So. Okay, as Casey said at the very beginning, in true Gathering Ground style, today's program will be a conversation, interactive, and Chris is completely cool with that. So if you have questions, please send them our way, put them in the chat, use the hand raised function available to you. And if you want to ask a question but don't want to ask it directly, you can direct a message and I or myself, and we'll ask it for you. Just a quick words about our esteemed guest today, and then we'll get started. I'll turn it over to Chris. Christian Smalls is the founder of the Amazon Labor Union, the first independent, democratic, worker-led labor union in American history for Amazon in Staten Island. Sorry. He's also the founder of the Congress of Essential Workers, a nationwide collective of essential workers and allies fighting for better working conditions, better wages, and a better world. Christian was formerly an Amazon warehouse supervisor, helping to open 3 major warehouses in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut during his 5 years with the company. But he was fired in 2020 after organizing a protest against the company's unsafe pandemic conditions. Chris has been profiled by media outlets worldwide, including the New York Times, USA Today, BBC, The Guardian, 60 Minutes, CNN, Political, Washington Post, New York Magazine, Wall Street Journal, CNBC, CBC, CBC Radio, Salon, and Jacobin, and Gathering Ground now. Add to your list. He was Times 100 most influential people in the world in 2022 and 2023. So we are very excited to have you with us today, and I will turn it over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, everybody, for being here and joining this space today. Definitely an honor to be speaking with y'all. I have a lot of time today, so it's really good that I get to have a dialogue and answer questions. So for those who don't know, I started working at Amazon in 2015. I was hired as a picker, making $12 an hour at the time. That was what they were paying. I thought it was I actually left a union job to go to Amazon, believe it or not. I was a Teamster working at a grocery distribution warehouse overnight. And I was there for about 3 years. I had to work from 10 p.m. to 8 in the morning. But I was one of the youngest employees there, around 24 years old. And a lot of the people that was working there were older than me. And they've been a part of the union for at least 10 years, some of them 20 years. What I didn't realize is that we had this contract that was signed before I was employed. And I never even had to utilize my rights until I realized that we were being mistreated even at the warehouse. We had some upper management that were using some racist remarks towards us. We were Black and brown workers. And one day I went upstairs and I had my phone on record. Something told me to do this. And he said some derogatory things towards me. Everything was recorded. I went downstairs to HR. HR was pretending like they were in shock. And I'm going to give y'all advice. HR is, when you're an organizer, HR is never your friend. You know, that's the term that we use in labor. Is HR are never your friend because they have to obviously protect the company. So HR pretended like they cared. Of course, they said, "Oh, this is unbelievable. He's been here for years." But I doubt that that was the first time they had a complaint about him. So the next step was being a union member. I was able to call the local and ask for arbitration. And basically, I presented the evidence to the union shop stewardess. They came to the building, to the warehouse. We went upstairs. We had a meeting. And you would think that I'll get justice out of this. But long story short with this story, it didn't end well for me. The conversation with the union was they were going to give this manager who used some language that should never be used by a white man. They gave him a coaching and basically was a slap on the wrist. And they gave me like what they call immunity for 3 months, meaning that I could come into work late, I could take off whenever I want, I could do whatever I want, pretty much in the warehouse, and they're not going to retaliate against me. And I just thought that was, and it was ironic. They tried to, it was a privilege to be put on the high low. So they put me on the high low, which is an easier operation at the job instead of the electric pallet jack that I was normally using. So that was the advantage that I got. But that's obviously not enough. Once again, it was shock to me that everybody was older than me that was tolerating this for years. And me being the youngest employee there, only there for 3 years, and already had a case that I thought was valuable to everybody. And I even presented it as a petition to get this manager fired. And I even tried to file a lawsuit. I called a lawyer up and got some advice. The lawyer said if I can get a group of workers to corroborate the story, then we can get something going. But I couldn't even get one person. Not one person was willing to put their job at risk, or speak up and hold either the union accountable or obviously the company accountable. I just instead of organizing, which I had no intention on doing anyway, I decided that I was going to quit the job. And around this time, Amazon was opening up a brand new warehouse in New Jersey. It was one of the first major fulfillment centers in the North New Jersey area. Prior to that, we only had one, and that was in Robbinsville, New Jersey. Some of y'all may have heard that or seen it or drove past it. Robbinsville, New Jersey was the biggest fulfillment center at the time in New Jersey back in the 2000. I think they opened around 2010 or 2012. And not JFK, EWR 9, which was my fulfillment center, was opening up in 2015 in Carteret, New Jersey. So actually, my mom, I don't know if she's on the call, but my mom is the one who actually flagged it and told me to go apply, and which I did. I followed up, and they hired me. I left the company, I put in my 2 weeks, and I went to Amazon. So I went from a unionized job to go to Amazon, and actually I took a pay cut. Of course I took a pay cut. It wasn't that much of a pay cut, but it was a pay cut. Definitely felt the difference, but the job was so easy. I'm not gonna lie, the job that was unionized was very physical. Grown men that were, once again, older than me and bigger than me and stronger than me, I watched them quit every day. That's how hard the job was. But I was, I was an athlete, basketball, football, track. So physical jobs, especially in my 20s, that was pretty easy for me as well. But I seen how difficult the job was physically on men, on anybody, and people quit every single day. They had hiring sprees every week, but you had to make the union. You had to, even though they hired you on the spot, you have to go through a 90-day probation, and you have to keep your productivity above a certain percentage to make the union, which most people didn't. I made the union, and I made it. I was a pretty good worker there, so I never had that issue. Amazon was a breeze to me. By the time I got to Amazon, I said productivity, and the items at Amazon fulfillment centers are less than 50 pounds. So the items that you order on Amazon.com, anything less than 50 pounds is coming to my warehouse, a fulfillment center. And I know you guys are not gonna like the title, but the title of my department was I was a picker. And when you think about picking items, it's absolutely what you think. Slavery, fast forward 400 years, uh, technology included, you're doing the same thing as picking in the cotton field. You're picking items from a robot show, producing a number by the hour, and you work 10 hours a day at Amazon. So back then, and I'm partially to blame for the rate of what it is now today. When I got hired, because remember I said that productivity at Amazon was a breeze to me. So when I got hired, I was doing twice as much productivity as anybody next to me. That's how good I was at the job. And at the time, this is before Amazon is what it was today. So at the time, I didn't realize how valuable I was to the company, to the entire company. My building, EWR9, was the number one building when they hired me for 9 months straight because I was the number one picker in the entire Amazon network for 9 months straight. That's how good I was. The rate by the hour was 250 items per hour, meaning that I had to pick in less than 10 seconds 250 items per hour. I was doing 600 an hour. I was blowing it out the water. Managers were in shock. They didn't know how I was doing it. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, this company is fairly new. This is my way to getting promoted up to a manager one day. I'm going to work hard. So, yes, I did get promoted in less than a year. I got promoted in 7 months from entry level to an assistant manager, a process assistant. So now I'm in charge of the department that I used to be a part of. And that's also when it was eye-opening how valuable one person is to the operation. And I didn't realize it. Once again, I'll give an example. My building started out with 500 people. I was one of the first 500 at the building. It was only 8 pickers, only 8 of us. And they would shut down 7 of them and leave me on by myself. That's how good I was. That they can shut down the other 7 stations and leave me on. So a lot of managers that they hired, they do this thing at Amazon warehouse. They give you a walkthrough, a tour. They make it all feel like Disney World. When you get hired, they did the same thing for us. You see all this technology. You go to the break room, the cafeteria. They have video games. They got big screen TVs. They got couches. They got a marketplace where you can get your lunch. They got a kiosk. They got computers. They got everything you've never seen a PlayStation 5, an Xbox you can play. So they make it seem like it's Disneyland when you get hired. That all changes quick. You don't even have time to sit down in there. So forget about all of that. That's for sure. But all the managers, that the people that are going to be operation managers, senior ops, they do this thing called a walkthrough when they get hired, where they go and they shadow one of the good employees. So every manager that they hired came to watch me at my station for days and weeks, sometimes even months at a time, to learn how I was doing this. Meanwhile, gradually, Amazon was tricking us into raising productivity. It went from 250. Today, the productivity for that same job is 400 an hour. Because what they started to realize that when I was doing the numbers I was doing, if other people can get their rate up, they'll be able to raise the rate overall. So they wanted to wait to certain thresholds. And because I was a good picker, they promoted me to train other people to be as good as me. And of course, I did that. I did a great job at it. My teams were the #1 teams in every building that I worked in. We had the #1 record. My floors had the highest numbers. So gradually, it went from 250 on the Amazon network level, meaning everybody in across the country, across the world, got to do these numbers now. 250, 275, 300, 350. To today is 400 an hour for 10 hours a day. So I used to tell my new hires, if you got a gym membership, cancel it, because you're doing 10 to 12 hours of calisthenics. And I'm going to tell you something bad. At every building that I worked at, somebody has died. So that's how not only dangerous that this job is, but Amazon right now is the #1 company in the country for injuries over any other industrial industry, construction industry, dangerous jobs out there. Amazon, a retailer, is the #1 company right now in this country. And it's been that way for years, actually, by the way, for injuries. People get injured at the job every single day. As we speak, somebody's getting injured. So, because the warehouses, by the way, they're 24/7, they never close. So, I was promoted my first year at Amazon. I was a supervisor. I remained in that position for the next 4.5 years. After opening up the building in New Jersey, I had the opportunity to go out to Connecticut to open up another building. I thought, okay, let me take this opportunity, because they only came to a select few of us, and they sold us a dream. They made us believe that going out there, opening up a new building will help us get promoted to a manager, a salaried manager level, which was my goal to become. Obviously, if you become a manager at Amazon, you're pretty well off, pretty decent salary. A low level manager, not so much, but I want to get to the level where I can at least make at least 6 figures to support my family. And also, what I really was trying to gain was the shares that they gave the managers. And they don't do this anymore. But when I got hired at Amazon, they used to give managers not only a 6-figure salary, but they would give them about 30, 40 shares. But as the profits, we already know billionaires, they love their profits. They realized that was a mistake. They started downsizing. So now they give, some of the low level managers, they only make about 48,000, and they only give them about 8 shares now. Not to what they opposed to what they used to give them. So it's always about putting the profits above the people. No matter if it's managers or low level, entry level, corporate, it doesn't matter. You are expendable to the company. And it took me a while. It took me 5 years to realize that. I thought because I was getting all this attention, I was the most popular person in the building. The way you see me now is the way I came in. Gold chains, gold jewelry, and I had a nice Pepsi Blue BMW at the time when I got hired at Amazon. And that's because I worked at my union job, which once again, it paid me pretty well. I was able to buy my car. So I came into Amazon as is. I got promoted as is. I was so special that I didn't even have to wear an Amazon vest. They let me wear whatever I wanted to wear working at any warehouse. And anybody can attest to this. I was the only supervisor that got special treatment. I was able to go into the general manager's office, put my feet up on the desk. I was able to go into senior ops office. They put me on different shifts to help other managers. I even wrote a letter to Jeff Bezos. I created projects. I've done so many things for the company. I got every accolade that you can get as an assistant manager, from being the most valuable person to having the best numbers, setting building records, being the #1 associate. I've done it all. I passed courses. I even went to schools for the company to teach kids how to code on behalf of Amazon. I went to my kids' school. I did a bunch of things for Amazon. And even with all of that accolades, I still was denied over 50 times to become a manager. I applied to be a manager over 50 times, and they only interviewed me twice in the 5 years that I was there. One, because systemically there's racism at Amazon. 70% of the upper management is white or Asian. 30% of us, black and brown, or other indigenous. And as you climb up the ladder, the numbers get worse. So I didn't realize that until COVID-19 hit in 2020. After putting in my 5 years, Amazon has this thing where they call it the offer. If you work there every year that you work there, they can pay you $1,000 per year to quit the job and never be rehired by any of his companies or Amazon ever again in your lifetime. And you know how many people take that deal? Thousands. They sign this job, and not only that, they don't give you $1,000, by the way, they tax it. So you probably get $500 after that. And you can never work at Amazon or any of the 75 companies that they own ever again for your entire life. And it's so bad that in the next few years, 1 out of every 4 Americans is going to have worked for Amazon or work at Amazon. In less than 30 years, Amazon has already hired and fired the entire American workforce. That's insane. I'm only 36. So imagine that 30 years ago, this company was not what it was. Not even 30 years ago, 15 years ago. People were getting up, going to their shopping malls, going to their local main streets, going to their local stores, bookstores and everything, Toys R Us. They're all gone now because we're giving our money to one company. And that's what people, it blows my mind at how quick we did that in 10 years. So, and I worked at Amazon and I never shopped there. So I laugh all the time. I'm like, people go crazy over it. I hated Amazon. I mean, the job was fun for me because I'm a people's person, but I hated the stuff that is sold because I was a picker. I seen it firsthand, and it's just not good quality. And I just couldn't understand why people will order a toothbrush on Amazon.com and pay the silly fees, delivery fees, or whatever to deliver something that they could walk, 20 feet away to get. Go to a local store and get. It doesn't make any sense to me. So, people have an addiction with it, and I understand it's like a drug. Sometimes you got to wean yourself off of it. And I realized once again, I was a part of that machine, being a supervisor, being the best at the job, producing the productivity that I was just keeping the machine going. But I had enough when not only COVID-19, but as I mentioned, it was my 5th year, and I was going to take the $5,000 offer because that's the maximum amount of money, by the way. They cap it out like they cap everything else. They cap it out where I was going to take $5,000 after taxes. I probably would have got $2,500 literally to not work at Amazon ever again or any of his companies right before COVID-19 hit. I was just about to sign, and then COVID-19 hit, and I saw how which I consider my extended family, my coworkers, colleagues, the employees that I'm supervising, they were unprotected, including myself. As a supervisor with the type of platitude that I had, I figured it was my responsibility, being the most, once again, the most notable one in the building, the most tenured one at JFK Staten Island, which opened up in 2018, by the way. I opened that building up. And Staten Island in 2020, once again, we're talking about pandemic times, New York City being the epicenter of the world. JFK Staten Island warehouse has over 8,000 workers that commute from all 5 boroughs and New Jersey. So imagine how many people come in contact with each other at the warehouse. Thousands every single day. And during this time, I'm watching as a supervisor closely how one by one, people were dropping like flies, meaning they weren't showing up to work. When they showed up to work, they looked very sick. My managers wasn't coming to work. It was a very eerie feeling in the building. Meanwhile, we're sitting shoulder to shoulder watching CNN in the cafeteria. Remember, I tell you, they got the big screen TVs. They forgot to turn the channel that day. We were sitting there glued to the TV, and they're telling us as we're watching, surrounded by people in the cafeteria that's full of hundreds of people, that we're supposed to be socially distanced and quarantined and masked up. And we're looking around like that's not happening right now. And New York City is already the epicenter of the world, of the entire world. And my mom works at Mount Sinai. She can attest to how many trucks of dead bodies was outside of the hospital during that time. And then I believe people were at one point were dying every 15 minutes in New York City. So could you imagine the feeling as an Amazon worker that's being deemed an essential worker? We didn't ask for it. They just put it on us. They put us in the same category as the Red Cross. Literally, Jeff Bezos did that with his own mouth. And he was still the CEO at the time. So he went out and said that Amazon workers are the closest thing to the Red Cross, which now stamped us as essential workers, put a burden on us, which we didn't ask for, and now we're being forced. I remember driving the New Jersey Turnpike, and I was the only car on the highway, heading to Staten Island, with a letter on my dashboard saying that I'm an essential worker, which was made up, by the way, out of thin air. They just typed that up and signed it from Amazon and said we can. It was BS. So it just didn't sit right with me as somebody that's been there for a long time, that always tried to protect the workers at the bottom, because that's where I came from. And when I went to upper management and I went to HR, knowing HR is not my friend, and what did HR do? They spun me again. They gave me the runaround back and forth. We're going to do something. We're going to do something. Every day I was on them. Finally, I had enough. I started organizing. And I wasn't organizing the union. I was just trying to organize over health and safety. So the first thing was I clocked out and said, I'm not going to work anymore. I'm going to come to the building, because Amazon had this policy where you don't have to work if you don't want to, and you won't be reprimanded. So I said, okay, good. I'm going to come to the building every day, and I'm not working on the floor, but I'm going to sit in the break room and tell the workers the truth. And that's exactly what I did. For an entire week, me and my brother, Derek Palmer, we sat in the cafeteria and told every worker that Amazon is lying to us, they're not protecting us, and we want to shut the building down. And the numbers in the cafeteria every single day grew. We started out with a small group of 10, but by the end of the week, we had 50 workers sitting in the cafeteria. And now the company is communicating with me directly as the supervisor. They were only telling me to come into the office, because we did march on the boss a few times, and it became a heated argument, which you can actually listen to online as well. So, yeah, I mean, they singled me out. As some of you may know, I was fired because of all of these things that I was raising. The end of the week, they decided to quarantine just me. Out of 8,000 people, I was the only one to be quarantined as the first one. And I knew right there that was a red flag, because I'm like, quarantine, you never told us about any of these policies. So these policies didn't exist. And then when I told them about the walkout that we're going to do, they pretty much used me as the scapegoat and said, okay, if you do something, we're going to reprimand you. And they tried to read me like sort of like Amazon Miranda rights. You know, and I'm like, I know what you guys are doing. Yeah, basically saying that if I do something, I already read me my rights to fire me. I get it, but I don't care. I'm going to do this walkout, which we did. I was fired the same day of the walkout. It was very public. And Jeff Bezos, who was the richest man in the world at the time, because billionaires made the most money during the pandemic. They made like 300 times the amount of money they would normally make during the pandemic. He was making $13 billion a day, $9 million an hour, almost $5,000 a second during that time when he decided to have a meeting with his general counsel and the guy, David Sapolsky, who was his top counsel, calling me not smart or articulate, ironically, to make me the face of the whole unionizing efforts against Amazon. And once again, as I mentioned, I was not even trying to form a union, had no idea what they were talking about, besides the fact that these are racist remarks and it's something that doesn't sit well in the Black community.
Chris,
yeah.
Chris, sorry, if I can just jump in here with one question that is
Sure.
kind of percolating up for some folks. It sounds, what we're seeing are the classic strategies and tactics of the system of white supremacy, of racism in our country, of trying to divide people, right? Of trying to confer favor in order to make people not actually work together as they were doing to you, to penalize and create these made up rules, right? Where suddenly there's punishment for actually speaking out. And I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to, now that you've sort of helped us understand the shape of your journey here, what are the tactics that you started to use, like the sitting in the cafeteria and speaking the truth to your workers, right, to your colleagues? What are some of those tactics that you started to employ when you realized, okay, the system's coming, they're coming for me because I'm actually doing the right thing here?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the best tactic is word of mouth. Like, just think about it. In the primal days, we didn't have technology, or maybe we did, but who knows? We had communities where people would talk to each other. That's what we had. You know how they say that it takes a village to raise a child. So when I grew up, and I'm sure plenty of y'all, when y'all grew up, everybody in the neighborhood kind of kept an eye on you, right? Like my crossing guard, my neighbors, people that we see every day, the landlord, whoever, they would sort of keep an eye on the kids, knowing the parents are workers, going to work every day. And you were able to knock on your neighbor's door and borrow sugar, milk, whatever. You had that relationship in your neighborhood, in your community, right? A lot of us did. I know I did. And we were able to go outside and feel safe. Go outside. Kids were able to go outside and ride bikes for hours and not really worry, because everybody, once again, the village was watching the kids. Everybody knew all the kids in the village or the community. We don't live in those times anymore. Amazon plays a huge part of that. Why do people love sitting home, isolated, away from the world, on a computer or a laptop, and just clicking, one click buy? I'm going to buy all this stuff, and I'm just going to answer the door. No interaction, no human interaction, no going to the store, no talking to people. And now you don't want to talk to your neighbors anymore. You just want to order stuff. You don't even go to the mall no more. You just order it. It isolated us as people, as a society. Me, I was an inspiring artist, rapper. I wanted to be a rapper. Before social media is what it was. There was no Instagram. There was no TikTok. Facebook, maybe, and MySpace, which was So it's like, for me, being an independent rapper, I had to go speak to people. So when you ask the tools, just having conversation was the best weapon. As an independent artist, I was able to get thousands of people. And at one point, it wasn't like that. It was just the people I knew. 20, 30 people would show up to my shows, and it broke my heart sometimes. I would cry, whatever. But I kept just building up my confidence to go back out there and talk to people in different spaces. So I went from talking to people in my community, in my high school, to let me go down the street just a little bit further and let me go talk to this community college down the street or another university and try to talk to those college kids. And then next thing I know, word of mouth just spread and flyering, leafleting. I was flying for my event every Friday in consistency. And that's another tool. I was so consistent, I was able to do it every week. I went from having 20 people at my shows to sometimes 2,000 as an independent rapper from North New Jersey. And I had some big shows and I met a lot of good people. Some who y'all know may have heard of ASAP Rocky, who just got off his case yesterday. I actually used to hang out with him. That's a true story. But, you know, despite that, I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. I want you to finish the thought because I have a couple of questions for you that have come in that I want to make sure you're able to
I just
answer.
wanted to say, the best over my experience in the journey of my short time of organizing, the skill sets that I had, I also learned from Amazon, which was just to have to disagree, have a backbone, and commit. That was my favorite principle, meaning that I disagree with whatever it is. In Amazon, it was health and safety. Having a backbone, meaning that you want to stand up, you want to fight back, and then commit means you want to see it through. You're going to commit to make change. And what they don't explain is the commitment part. The commitment part is figuring out what you want to do to have an alternative solution. You can't just disagree and have a backbone and commit and don't have a plan on the other side. So always have an alternative that's going to be better than the one you're in now. And I think that's something that was my strongest weapon was I'm using Amazon's principles against them. Number one, I was already a good employee, as I alluded to before. And the skill sets of being an independent rapper as a young kid, 18, 19 years old. I've always been a people's person my whole life. I grew up in the village where I was able to communicate, having those skill sets of talking to people every day. It's just the things that we have right at hand. We don't need a whole bunch of money because I can tell you now we didn't have money when we started the union. And even the day we won, we only had $2 in our account. It's not about money. It's something that Amazon can't calculate. Amazon calculate metrics, how much numbers you're doing per hour, as I mentioned, how much profits they make per year, how much money Jeff Bezos has. That's what Amazon calculates, how many people they hire and fire. But what Amazon can never, ever, ever, ever calculate is people power. They don't have that. That is like kryptonite, Superman kryptonite. They don't understand grassroots organizing. Right. They didn't understand what I was doing.
Yep.
By the time they figured it out, I was already 2 steps ahead. And that's another thing, staying 2 steps ahead, like playing chess move.
It's so interesting, Chris, that you just said that, because the question that's in the chat, I'm going to ask that because I think a little bit of that you've already answered, and then I'll just go ahead and give you the second one, so I'll give you a chance to answer both. But the first question is, what role did grassroots organizing and community support play in the union's success? And you've said a little bit about that. I'd love for you to say a little bit more. And then the other question is, the Amazon Labor Union's Staten Island victory was historic. What lessons from that campaign can be applied to organizing efforts in other industries and other sectors? Definitely something that we don't see a lot in the nonprofit social sector. So if there's any lessons that you can convey to this group of folks, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Grassroots is what was our foundation. Before the Amazon Labor Union was even a thing, as Maria mentioned in the bio, I started a nonprofit called the Congress of Essential Workers. And we were a small group, just maybe 8 to 10 of us. And we had these weekly calls during the pandemic. We weren't no union. I was already fired. The leak memo came out already. And there was nothing for me to do but organize. A lot of people like, what kept you going? I'm like, well, think about it. I can't get hired at anywhere else. What company is going to hire me after seeing me all over TV, whistleblowing on Amazon? No company was going to hire me. And unemployment was backed up in New York 6 months. It was nothing for me to do. I was in my room just thinking. And then that leaked memo came out that said, make me the face of the whole unionizing efforts against Amazon. And I said, that's a good idea. Yeah, sure, make me the face. So I'm already in the media, and I use that media coverage to my advantage. First thing I did was found my nonprofit, the Congress of Essential Workers. Didn't know what the hell I was going to do, but I said, you know what? Let me get it on paper, and let me form the group. And the same Amazon workers who walked out with me, my brothers Derek, Jordan, Gerald, they were the founders of the nonprofit as well. We took the nonprofit coast to coast. During that time, we was able to raise money to go from New York City to Beverly Hills to Seattle, Washington, corporate, to every Jeff Bezos mansion that we could find in America. The $28 million mansion in DC, the $180 million penthouse in New York City, the $200 million mansion in Beverly Hills, which is now Jay-Z's and Beyonce's, the $28 million mansion in Seattle, Washington, and the corporate headquarters. We hit them all up before the union was even a thought, before ALU. This was the grassroots. This was during George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. This was during, climate defense. We had everybody from every different movement a part of our rallies. They all showed up to Jeff Bezos' house for us in solidarity, but we invited all essential workers. That's why we named our group the Congress of Essential Workers, to represent every working person in the working class. So during that, simultaneously, we were paying attention to another campaign in Alabama, which unfortunately they didn't succeed, but we actually drove from New York City 16 hours to Alabama to learn what was that union doing with those Amazon workers, the RWDSU. It was eye-opening because we're trying to figure out how can we incorporate some of their tactics and learn how to unionize. But it was something also missing from their campaign, which we noticed, is that the union wasn't really connected with the workers as we saw on the media. So we decided that we're going to start the independent Amazon labor union in 2021. So from that point, we transitioned from the nonprofit grassroots, but we still remain grassroots. As an independent union going up against Amazon, that sounds insane to the labor movement. Rightfully so, nobody in the labor movement jumped on us to support us. We were excluded. Labor experts wrote us off. Labor unions wrote us off. Media laughed at us. The media started to flip their narratives on me. Everything. We were outcasts. They called us a clown show at first. They called us a dumpster fire. All these different things we were hearing because we decided that we're going to do it grassroots and organize a brand new union against a $2 trillion company, by the way. Amazon's worth $2.4 trillion. So yes, it was insane, but sometimes you got to do insane things and unprecedented things. And I had no doubt in myself because I knew the principles that I applied at Amazon. I was easily able to apply that to my activism, and it gravitated to the people around me. So I had no doubt, and I didn't have no less confidence in the people that walked out of the building with me 5 years ago. We were out there for over 300 days, meaning we set up a tent right outside of the warehouse that fired me. For over 300 days, we stayed outside, night or day, hot or cold, rain or shine. We were out there talking to workers, using the same skill sets that I mentioned, face-to-face conversation, building the trust, earning the trust, building relationships, breaking bread. The little bit of money that we were getting from GoFundMe was going towards their food. we cooked for them. We gave them free literature, free books, free clothes, free food, and yes, free weed. And we did all of these different things to make sure that everybody felt like there was a community and a culture and something to lean on. And that was also something that Amazon could not calculate, and they couldn't even counter it. We were making the workers' job a lot easier just by organizing. Amazon now had to counter that, spending their $20 million to try to stop our efforts in one fiscal year. Insane. So they were giving the workers raises, not much, 25 cents. Um, they were um, they were putting them in captive audiences. So imagine you being a new hire at Amazon, your first day on the job, and they put you in a room for 1 hour every day and tell you to vote no for the union and the people across the street. And they were deliberately attacking me, of course. They used a bunch of racist remarks. Um, they tried to say that I was going to steal people's money, that I was going to show up at people's houses that vote no, all types of things they were saying. Intimidation factors, they got me arrested. They arrested some of my coworkers, my colleagues as well. They did everything in the book to union bust. And even with all of that, we were still able to succeed. On April 1st of 2022, we beat Amazon by over 5% in our election, and we successfully won and became the first union in American history. That resurgence, yeah, for the greater good of the labor movement, it was a resurgence of a lifetime. They said this was a win in over 100 years, one of the biggest in the generation. And we didn't realize how big it was because we're a group of, once again, just workers. And the amount of attention that came. Remember, I said we won. We had $2 in our account. The next day, we had over 300,000. So
that's amazing.
It was a culture shock for sure. It was something that we weren't prepared for. We knew that we were going to do something great, and our goal was to stick it to Amazon, which we absolutely did. It was the best feeling of my entire life, next to my kid's birth. But you know, the fight just started. Actually, it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And now,
and Chris,
yeah.
Sorry, finish your thought.
No, I was going to say, and now, no, fast forward. Here we are. We're not an independent union. We're affiliated with the Teamsters, but we have a fight that's worldwide because Amazon is basically a worldwide company.
Amazing.
I think
Debbie's got her hand up. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So we got a question from the room. Debbie, go ahead and unmute.
Okay. Chris, hi. I'm Debbie Henley. I'm Bob Henley's wife. I think maybe you probably have seen his reporting on your amazing work.
Yeah.
One of the things I hope you know, so I've worked in corporations for a long time as an engineer, as a lawyer, I'm a chief compliance officer. One of the most powerful things management employees, people who are not, your manager level and above, is that the power of organizing is exactly what you said. It's a community thing. When you have a connection between people at a management level, you look at your peers, people have your back, people are going to step up and speak up for you. There's nothing that can take that down. And what I find really just inspiring is the courage and the integrity that you showed to attract people to sit there with you and make that community. So I don't know if your mom, I'm assuming your mom, I think, come up.
Yeah, I think she did jump in, and I don't know. Yeah.
I would love to ask her. So I have 3 daughters who are millennials like a little younger and a little older than you. What what are you doing as a parent? Because this is what I would ask her. What are you doing as a parent to make sure your children feel the importance of courage and integrity and know what's very clear is that you know from inside you that you don't need anybody else's approval to be who you are, to be courageous, to stand in your values and your integrity. How do you do that? How do you do that? How did is your mom here? Because I really want to hear from her before you.
Mom, you here?
I'm not sure she's prepared to answer, but
All right, well, I would
Okay.
love to hear, I would love to
Hello.
hear you because I think teachers of, middle school and high school kids need to hear this, especially right now with this dystopian thing that we're now entering. How do we make sure kids develop the kind of courage and integrity that you have?
and maybe if I can add that as all of us in this community, as teachers, role
She's there.
models, educators, yeah, like what we can learn to be able to teach our kids that. So I think
I see
yeah.
Dawn Smalls. There she
yeah,
is.
there she is.
Hello.
Can we put you on the spot, Dawn, and answer the question?
That's okay. Absolutely. Like my son said, is communication and community. I believe that with this society, that people are missing just getting to know someone and empathy and just being honest. I think sometimes we have to have real conversations about what's going on in the world.
Right,
We have to protect our children.
right.
You want them to make right decisions and you want them to be able to survive without you being around and make good judgment. So that was always something that I instilled in my sons. I have a younger son that's 15 years old with my husband. So Christian and my middle son are like 19 years apart from my younger son. So it's like two different worlds. So adapting to this society and just raising kids. And I think what I see now, these kids are really resilient if they have the right information and the right truth. I think they will do the right thing if the world wasn't so shadowed by the internet and false information. And I just really believe that everything starts at home. And I always told my older sons, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I can always say that I was an outgoing person, talkative. I was in a union at one time, and I'm a very people person. And I think he took a lot of his just being a people person from me. Christian, you did.
Sure.
But I just feel like just being honest and just trying to build those communities that we used to have. Like I was a single parent before I met my husband. And raising Christian and my middle son, I had people to help me. Like I had someone say, Dawn, go take that job in New York. I got you. You will pick up the boys when you get off of work. And I'm still in New York to this day. It's been 26 years. It'll be 26 years. And I had that community that he talked about and just getting to know someone and speaking to people. Then I had a neighbor I lived in a building with, and she moved in. I used to see her with her son, and we just started talking. So I was like, I'll watch your son. I'll get off at this time. Like, we don't have that anymore. I think everybody is just in an uproar. And I just think that we just basically need to have tough conversations with our children and be honest about things that is going on. And you want them to be a good person. And that's how I raised my sons. And, I think I'm a good person. And I just want people to be good people.
Right.
It's just
I think, and it sounds like what both of you are saying is that community first, of course, but this ability to talk across generational divides is really important to the success of not just the millennials, but the Gen Zers coming behind them.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, not being afraid to respectfully have a conversation with somebody who's older or has more tenure in the company or whatever, and vice versa. This is something I try to instill in people who are, baby boomers is PS, they have really good ideas,
They do. They
right?
do.
And sometimes we gotta, like, we have one mouth and two ears for a reason. Like, we gotta shut up and listen, because sometimes younger people can teach older people something
Well,
that,
this, and I'll be
I
honest with
love,
you, when
I love
this
how
whole
this,
thing happened with my son, I have cried. When this whole thing happened, I thought that, Christian birthday is the 4th of July, and he was always that kid that had the boom. So when he told me, he used to call me every night, Mom, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start a workout. I said, well, Christian, do what you have to do. I never in a million thought that this was going to, I'm like, okay, this child just went up against Jeff Bezos. He's going to just ruin our family. Like, I just was like, oh my God. Like, I think I worried so much, but I can tell you that was a good experience, because when it happened, I just prayed. And then it dawned on me. I said, leaders are chosen. So my next conversation with him, when I saw all the things that was coming after all this happened, I still worry to this day, is just to stay humble. Don't change your heart. Be the good person that you are as is, because everybody came, how he dressed, this, that, and other. And I tell people Christian was always that way. But just being yourself and just being humble and wanting to help people is, something that I always just want him to be grounded and just stay focused on what he wants to aspire to help people.
Thank you. I think
Thank
that's
you
Ladies.
both.
that's
Thank
a
you
great
Thank you.
community principle.
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
to take it back to your community
Yeah.
point, that cross
Ladies, we're gonna need to move into some more community questions as well, because we've only got about 20 minutes left with Chris today. So thank you so much for that wisdom. You're now
welcome.
quoted in our chat, Ms. Smalls, as dropping some serious wisdom here for the team.
Thank you.
So we had
Yeah.
a couple of questions that came through the registration process that I want to make sure get asked. So one of the questions, Chris, was, how can unions and academics better cooperate to expand efforts to increase working class power? So I'm going to drop that into the chat as well for everybody. But do you have any thoughts based on that?
Yeah, definitely. I just visited today, actually. I just got back from a middle school. As a labor leader going in for career day, it's really, once again, as my mom alluded to, is like we're doing this for our children. It was a blessing for me to be able to walk in and kids get excited to see somebody that's in the labor movement, opposed to seeing an NBA star or a rapper or somebody of that stature. Because of course, when I walked into the class, the kids they're frowned. They're like, "Who is this guy?" And these are 7th and 8th graders. And by the end of the conversation, now they all want to take selfies with me. And that right there, and it's not because we were talking about being rich or aspiring to be what I wanted to be, NBA player or a rapper, is because that I fought against Jeff Bezos. And I shared the 10-minute film with them. I had some conversation about it. I told them who I met, of course. And I told them some of their favorite people are in, a lot of the kids want to be basketball players. And I said, guess what? It's an exclusive club. You got a 1% chance. But guess what? Every player, whether it's football, basketball, soccer, NFL, they have a union. And when they realized that, they're like, really? And I said, your teachers that invited me here today, they're in the union. So the teachers went on strike in 2019. And I said, teachers, explain to your class, what did you do? The teachers went on a 1-day strike for health insurance and walked out, and they got the health insurance. And I said, well, kids, if you don't want to do your homework on Friday, collective power. And they started to laugh, but they started to understand it's all about collectiveness. And that's the power that we have as people. And I explained to them, broke it down that you could be as cool as a rapper, you can look as cool as me, you could dress like me, you could talk like me, because they were calling me all types of rappers, saying I look like this and that, and they thought I looked so cool, dressed so cool. I said, well, you can look as cool as this and be an organizer. And that's something that we saw the light bulbs in their head. And even I got my daughter with me. My daughter, she came to she's 12 years old, by the way. She's a half a twin. And my daughter came to Queens College with me yesterday. And she got a glimpse of what it was from the college experience as a 12-year-old to give me, watch her dad give a speech to this audience of students. And I had to explain to her. She started asking questions of like, what college did I go to? We started talking about what school she want to go to and how she was going to be one day walking around on campus like these college students. And I said, one day I'm going to walk into your class too. So, it's good to have these young kids get involved. But yes, we have to get to our students younger. I would have loved as 10-year-old, 12-year-old me, have somebody like me, look like me, talk like me, walk into the classroom instead of being a police officer or a firefighter. We got to play on the fire trucks. We all did that. But now on career day, invite your labor leaders. As academics, bring labor leaders, bring myself. I'm always open to go talk to any students. I've been doing students all month for Black History Month. I have a couple more schools to do. I got an elementary school from Mississippi. They're flying to New York City to come visit me in person. So I love talking to kids all the time, and it's starting to resonate with the younger generation, and they are going to lead the way.
That's powerful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Chris. And I completely agree. I think, especially now, when I think everything that you said made the case for the just how much power corporations like Amazon have been able to amass. And it's just getting, what we're seeing now is just the oligarchs just controlling the country in many ways. And so I think understanding the power that we have at a very young age, elementary school, middle school, and to claim that power, I think is something that we've forgotten maybe as Americans. And I know you've traveled the world and have had conversations all across the world. So you might have a sense of how different it is possibly in other countries. But I definitely think that we've lost or forgotten how much actual power we have when we come together. And so getting that instilled in our young ones is definitely something that I think we need to do, and getting new ideas of what we look to as heroes and leaders, like you said, is a great way to start that. I want to just ask you something, because we're all facing unprecedented attacks, not just organizers in terms of like labor unions, but we have huge challenges ahead of us. And I'm just wondering if you could give us, there was a question in the chat that made me think this is interesting and relevant for labor unions and organizers, labor organizers in general, but specifically, but organizers and activists in general who are facing really, really tough decisions right now. What keeps you motivated against all the obstacles and the challenges that have come your way and that have made the fight even harder?
Well, it's the same thing as, remember the part of this story when I said, I realized how valuable I was to the company because I was one of 8 that could be on the machine, and they could take the other 7 off and I'll still keep the numbers up. And when I accomplished, helping the union succeed and helping the resurgence of the labor movement in America, and then I did something that 70% of Americans don't do. I got a passport and I left the country, and I realized how valuable our victory was to the world, not just America, not just Staten Island. I realized JFK, Staten Island, Amazon Labor Union is bigger than the Wu-Tang. And the Wu-Tang is well loved all over the world. I can tell you that right now. And they're from Staten Island, and we're bigger than them. And I mean, like, on a massive level, in the labor movement, millions of workers around the world know about the Amazon. Millions, not just thousands, millions. And every day I get up with the same question in my head. If I don't get up and do the work that I'm doing, who's going to do it? And it's a no-brainer. I know how important I am to other people around me, my closest people, my core team. And as a leader, Jane McAlevey, rest in peace, she said this to me. There's leaders and there's activists. And our job as leaders is to activate the activists. And it's that simple. And I spent many of intimate nights with Jane McAlevey, rest in peace, before she passed. She came and we spent a lot of time at the Union Hall. I spent a lot of time at her house. Her favorite book, her first book that she wrote, Fight Like Hell. I recommend everybody read it. And also, just knowing that, once again, if we sign up for a lifetime fight as an organizer, you have to sacrifice something. I sacrifice a lot of time away from my kids, but I know my sacrifice away from them is going to benefit them in the long run so that they don't have to fight as hard as I'm fighting right now. I don't want my kids to go to Amazon. As I mentioned, in the next few years, 1 out of every 4 Americans are going to be working at Amazon or know somebody, be related to somebody, if not themselves, they're going to be working for Amazon or one of its 75 different companies. And I don't want y'all, even y'all now, to go through what we had to go through in 2020 during the pandemic and what we still are going through right now without a contract. Because there won't be no systemic change in Amazon until Amazon workers in America have a contract. And Amazon has unions in other countries like Italy that's been unionized for over a decade. I've seen their contract. I actually have a copy of it. So it's possible that you can have a union at $1 trillion company and their profits are just fine.
Yep.
It's a myth. They always say unions destroy business. That is a myth. There's no such thing as low-skilled workers because I promise you, Jeff Bezos cannot pack a box. So we understand that we're really the rich people and we have to withhold our labor and use our collective power.
Let me ask you this, Chris, because there's a question. I know we have a long way to go in terms of organizing labor in this country. We definitely have seen, the momentum pick up with your fight and a lot of companies. I know there's been organizing in Starbucks, et cetera, that has been ignited by what you've done. Is there ever a point, I think the question was, is there ever a point where unions can have too much power?
Too much power? Yes, there is. There's a point where obviously there's some unions, and actually America's a prime example where unions they're not held accountable to, and accountability goes both ways. Yes, unions' job is to be the shield of the working class, and unions' jobs our unions are supposed to protect the working class. And not only that, they got to organize us. And I can tell you now that our unions have failed us when it comes to organizing. Yes, we won. Yes, Starbucks won. But these are independent movements. These are isolated movements. And union density right now, as we speak, is still on the decline. Where all the jobs that are being created now, especially with artificial intelligence, are not unionized jobs. So every day, ununionized jobs are being created, and the unions are not organizing at that pace, not even close to where it should be. Union density in the public sector is less than 10%. Union density in the private sector is less than 6%.
Oh,
so as much as we pay attention to all the labor movement, sad to say that it's in its own little bubble in America.
Yeah.
And we have to do better. And that's another thing is we have to find a way to get labor into every space possible, whether it's fashion, music, it's already in sports, but it has to be integrated in schools, elementary schools, as we mentioned, curriculum, so that they learn about the history, the current history, not just the old history, but the current history of labor in this country, and so that we can have these conversations in spaces that we didn't have before.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons we wanted to make space for you to talk to our community as well, because these conversations need to be happening everywhere, as you said. There's another question on the chat. We're at 10:02. So if you have any questions that you're thinking of, please put them in the chat so we can get them to Chris before we run out of time. But the next question is, how do we organize and stay a step ahead when the powers at be are doing whatever they can to fragment us and constantly be reactive? You know, we're so busy putting out fires, it's hard for us to organize for long-term strategy. So any thoughts on how to stay a step ahead?
Yeah. I mean, you know, they say stay ready so you don't have to get ready. America is a very retroactive country. This election showed us that we're retroactive. If y'all can't tell, the Democratic Party is in shambles right now. They didn't prepare themselves not only for this election, they didn't prepare themselves to set them up for the future. Right now, they're pointing the finger every which way but to themselves. And we're in a two-party system that for a very long time, both sides have been disconnected from the working class for decades. So we have to figure out as a country why we got only two options and not multiple options. Other countries have multi-party governments. Other countries have labor parties. Other countries have more of a socialist system, policies, universal health care. I've been to countries with 0% crime rate, 0% homelessness, 0% mental health crisis. And America is supposed to be the greatest country in the world. And that is a myth. I can tell you that right now. We could go right over the border to Canada and not only get our health care, but they have one of the most progressive laws called the card check, meaning if you work at a company, you want a union, you go fill out an application. There's no election. There's no company pushback. There's no union busting. You can't. So we don't have that. And why? Because some of these unions, some of these politicians, they didn't do their due diligence. They weren't proactive enough to have some federal laws that haven't been touched since the 1930s. Imagine that. Joe Biden, when he was the president, just used the act from 1945 to break the railroad strikers over what? Sick days. 1945 went 2025. It doesn't make any sense. So we haven't changed any federal laws in this country in a very long time. And unions have not been organizing for a very long time. The resurgence in the labor movement, yes, we started a resurgence, but what should have happened didn't happen either. And now 3 years later, you know, we still don't have a bargaining order. And we can't put all that blame on the workers at the bottom or at the union that's independently made. It has to be a collective, and it has to be from people that's been in power. And it hasn't been that way. So for us, the same way I organized against Amazon, I was always 2 steps ahead of them. Every action has a reaction. And as I mentioned, the principles that I use, disagree, have a backbone, and commit, as I mentioned to that, you have to have an alternative solution. So what is our alternative solution right now to the two-party system? My idea is start a labor party. No brainer. So I started a labor party. That's what I'm doing now currently. But also, not forgetting where I come from, I'm still consulting with my union. I'm still helping out Amazon workers all over the world. Simultaneously, I don't know how I got this much time in the world. I don't know what time zone I'm in. It doesn't matter. All I know is that every single day I get up with the same fire that I have 5 years ago. Because we have to, the first step is getting up and knowing that you have to have 2 feet in. You can't have 1 foot in this fight. And you know, yeah, organizing is hard, it's tough, it's sad sometimes. People don't want to talk to you. People are going to shun you off, they're going to curse you out. You try to give them something, they're trying to be naive. Yes, they don't want to hear it. But it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And you have to, it may not be the first conversation, but it's several conversations, little by little. And I always tell my organizers this: not only be a good listener. I say 90% of organizing is being a good listener, 90%. And then the 10% is the physical part of your body. But 90% of organizing is listening. And don't talk about, we're all radicalized here. I can tell. We ain't gotta go that. We all know, we're aware of what's going on and why we need to fight as hard as we do. But the person next to us is not.
Mhm.
So we can't go to them and be like, you got to stop ordering from Amazon right now. We can't do that, because I know I have family and friends that still do it. And I tell them, it's a joke, go ahead. But you're going to get tired of it. You're going to get tired of hearing and seeing it. And then eventually they're going to be like, Chris, I canceled my Prime. And it happens all the time. So don't be mad at them. People are not wrong. They're misinformed.
Love
So
that.
you have to sometimes just little by little befriend them first, butter them up, whatever you do. Talk about the personal issues, talk about what's bothering them, what's affecting them personally. Get to know them. You got to hang out with them, go to the bar, whatever. You got to do all of that stuff before you start to radicalize them and say, oh, you want to raise? I want to raise too. How much you get paid? That's it. We need to form a union. That's how you do it. So it's little by little over time. And as I mentioned, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, you've definitely proven that, because you've been doing this for a number of years now. And I love that you have the same energy and passion and commitment that you've brought since day one. So thank you for all the wisdom that you've imparted, all the little kernels of all these beautiful quotes that you shared with us that I definitely draw inspiration from. And I hope that those of you that are here with us today not only get inspired by Chris's words, but also share some of them with your communities and your networks of folks. We're at 2 minutes of, so we're going to wrap up. Casey, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. Chris, where can people find you online if they want to stay informed about what you're doing, what you're working on, what's coming up, and what's coming down the pike?
Sure. I'm at Chris Smalls on Instagram, at Chris.Smalls_. And on Twitter, it's at @shut_down Amazon.
And we're putting that in the chat just as you're saying that.
Yeah, at @shut_down Amazon. And
Thank you.
yeah, follow me there. I also have the USA Labor Party at USA Labor Party on Instagram as well. And at Amazon Labor Union, of course.
Someone's asking if you have a Blue Sky account.
No. I know everybody. I don't know. I gotta do my homework on Blue Sky. I think there's some ties to Jeff Bezos there, so I gotta do some more research on it. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not. I don't know. I don't
think so.
Something iffy.
Well, and we know who Twitter's connected to.
Yeah. I know.
Right.
I mean, unfortunately, I had Twitter since 2009, so it's like, wow.
It's an
all
addiction
good.
you can wean yourself off of.
Right.
She's using her words against you.
You know what? But in the same time, the problem I have with Blue Sky is I feel like it's going to become an echo chamber. If everybody from the left goes to the Blue Sky, then we're talking to ourselves.
Right. That's a
So
good point.
I kind of want to stay on Twitter. I like arguing with the trolls.
Do both.
I'm a menace myself sometimes.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. And please, those of you, I know there were people that, wanted to be here and couldn't because of other conflicts. So we are putting this recording on YouTube and let other folks know that weren't able to join us today, that this will be available for viewing very soon. So we'll
And that-
definitely, yeah, go ahead.
We are
Chris.
also going to be holding one of our other programs that some of you are familiar with, the Communities in Conversation, coming up on March 5th, where we are going to continue the conversations that were inspired, but were some of the ideas that were inspired by Chris today. For anyone who's still interested in engaging in, like, let's start hashing this out. Like, let's think about how this works for the nonprofit sector. So for anyone who wants to dive into that more, you can come find us on March 5th and you can register on our website.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry, I thought I
You're on
was.
mute. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Chris. We would love to
you.
talk to you some more, so we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, y'all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Keep up the fight and the good work that you're doing, and we'll be following you closely. So we appreciate
Absolutely.
everything you do.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Chris.
everyone.
Take care, y'all.
Take care.